Most premonitions and precognitive visions are reported to occur unexpectedly, out of a person's control. But some claim they can summon information from the future on demand.
It's my experience that there's probably close to maybe 1 in 190, 1 in 200 that probably have the ability to the same degree that I have.
A former Army officer, Joe McMonagle, was part of a top-secret research program run by the Defense Intelligence Agency and CIA for over 20 years. Only recently declassified, the Stargate project examined a variety of phenomena, especially one known as remote viewing.
Remote viewing means the ability to remotely perceive information about a person, place, event, object that you have absolutely no access to through any other means except via the mind.
Beginning in the 1950s, the United States government explored the use of extrasensory perception for intelligence operations, with officials worried that the Soviets were ahead in the psychic arms race. Joe had already developed a reputation for his intuitive powers.
When you use the ability for so many years, you inherently begin to trust it more than you do other people because you're applying it on a day-to-day basis. In the case of being in Vietnam on a hazardous duty area, where my own intuitive feelings would tell me, no, this isn't the right thing to do, or I'd start getting that heavy feeling in my stomach and the butterflies and the hair standing up in the back of my neck. It doesn't take long for other people to start noticing that you're inherently making the right decision.
In 1972, Joe was recruited as remote viewer number 001. He would ultimately participate in hundreds of missions.
In Joe's case, I was the judge, and the results were astounding, not only for him, but overall for the entire group, which caught our attention. We were doing mostly operational work, where they might say, well, we expect something to happen a month from now. What can you tell us about it?
The first precognitive remote viewing that I did after I got angry, there was an admiral in the National Security Council who brought my remote viewing back to me and said that they basically did not believe that there was a submarine being built in a building in Severodvinsk, Russia. It made me very angry. They said they didn't believe it because the building was 1,000 meters from the sea. I said, go back and tell them they're going to launch it in 114 days. And the Typhoon-class submarine was launched from the building within 7 days of my prediction.
Today, they are running a test to see whether Joe can describe a photograph that he will be shown in the future.
This is a precognition trial, and what I mean by that is the computer, and nor I, nor anybody here will know the target until you finish your response to that target. It'll be randomly chosen when we're all done.
The task in these particular remote viewings, precognitively describe the photograph. That's the task. If I don't describe the picture, I'm wrong.
Please access and describe a photograph that you will see on this computer a few minutes from now.
One of the difficulties in remote viewing is probably its title, because one of the things it implies is that you're actually seeing something. In some cases, you're not. The thing that I do, and at least the way I approach it, is I try to empty my mind to open a stage where the next thing that I allow in is what I expect to be pertinent to the target. I'm left with kind of an image of a building with an entry gate with walls. I hesitate to say fortress, but it's some kind of walls.
I think that what Joe is doing is like what anybody else does, that our mind is not locked inside our brain. Our mind exists, in some sense, exists everywhere. We mostly think of it as being in there, which is why we're limited to mostly sensory information, but that's an illusion in a sense. We're actually more spread out in space and time than we know. So what Joe does and what other people like him do is change the focus of their attention. In a sense, that's all he does. He changes the focus of attention from mostly in here to tomorrow, or to 10 minutes over there.
Is that about it?
That's it.
All right. While I do the judging, if you wouldn't mind excusing yourself.
Sure.
We'll see you later. We'll call you back when it's all done. The computer chooses 5 pictures at random, very carefully done so, without any knowledge of what Joe's drawing was. And at this stage of the little experiment, it's precognition, so the actual answer has yet to be chosen. What I do now is to try to match these 5 photographs that I'm looking at to the one that best matches this response, and one of them appears to be a very solid match. My first place match is a Middle Eastern, clearly Middle Eastern village, and it has a walled enclosure exactly like you drew. Now that the judging is complete, where I've picked what I think is the right answer, we ask the computer to randomly pick one of these 5 pictures as the target. I'll switch around here, and it's a building.
Yeah.
You said mosque-like in one of the things.
Yeah.
It certainly has that. It's got the spires. It is brown. You can't come to any conclusion on the basis of a single draw. It could have been lucky. On the other hand, the lifetime average of Joe is somewhere a little under 50%, where 20% is chance. And the statistical likelihood of that is it should never happen by chance alone.
Absolutely, I can see the future. I've been doing it for 30 years. I've been doing it in labs under controls. I've been doing it out of labs for customers. It's as easy to do as it is to see the present. So, fait accompli.
Today, Joe runs his own private remote viewing firm.
I've had customers for 10 years, and I've asked them, why do you keep coming back to me? And they've said, because you're one of the best remote viewers I've ever worked with. You know, you've made X millions of dollars for my company. Why wouldn't I keep coming back to you?
Thursday, Friday, gym time. Funerals on. Saturday. And what else?
Yesterday.
Oh, God.
What you doing?
Jim, don't go on this trip, please.
Scientists have tried to find evidence for the ability to see the future for over a century.
What science can ask is this possible in principle? Not that particular story that I heard, but is it possible even in principle for this to occur? So that's where all the experiments come from.
In the past, simple experiments were conducted to see if some people could predict the future.
One way was to do something like, here is a die, and I'm going to toss it, and you tell me beforehand which face will land face up. And that could be done very easily and was done thousands of times. Another approach is to take a deck of cards with 5 symbols on them and say, okay, we'll shuffle it, and now we don't know what the answer will be, but you tell me what will happen when I shuffle it again and give you a card. So nobody knows what the answer is yet because it doesn't exist.
Radin took a different approach and decided to look for unconscious precognition. Physiological data showing that our bodies react to an event in the moments before it happens.
Dean Radin actually realized that a lot of our future experiences are first of all felt. Butterflies in the stomach or hairs standing up on your neck. And so he developed a line of research, what he called presentiment, that tries to look at this experimentally.
Presentiment means pre-feeling, the idea of a feeling coming upon you about the future. The technique then involves looking at sequences of pictures that are randomly selected in the future, and sometimes they're very emotional and sometimes they're calm. And the hypothesis is very simple then. You simply look before the picture is selected to see whether physiology is calm or emotional in accordance with what the future will bring.
Okay, Judy, what we're going to be asking you to do is just sit quietly. You'll be listening to some noises, okay? We're interested in whether people can anticipate these noises. In our experiment, we're using loud sounds as the kind of shocking future event. At the same time, we're monitoring skin conductance, which is an indicator of emotional arousal. We're interested in what happens several seconds before the computer even decides to give them a shock. You know, does their skin conductance anticipate a future event in there, that's going to be slightly unpleasant for them?
In the case of presentiment experiments, we're dealing with the real effect. There really is information coming from the future.
The run is now complete. An experiment will be with you shortly.
Okay, Judy, here are your results. Your body is showing a peak here, which shows that before the sound had randomly been produced, your body was anticipating that, so there's an increase in physiological arousal here.
If people's emotional system, as evidenced by the skin conductance or by other means, shows that one can reliably anticipate future events, well then we may be getting a handle on the mechanisms by which precognitive information from the future, changes human behavior.
We all express this all the time, I believe. And it does provide, in a small context, limited in space and time, the ability to see beyond our senses. And that's where things like gut feelings come in for the next 10 seconds or 15 seconds.
It's still a big leap from knowing something will happen moments before it does and knowing days or weeks beforehand. But Broughton sees enormous possibilities in precognition research.
My goal is to see if we can develop some sort of test technique, a screening device that might identify intuitively advantaged people who may sense their feelings about future events more readily than other people. And then we could start bringing them into business situations and other situations where their premonitions may be very useful.
That's probably a small minority of the population, 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 that have a talent in that direction. Many of them may never develop that talent. Or they do develop it and they become extremely successful people in business or in the arts or in some other realm. There are probably people watching the program right now who know very well that they use these skills and they're very successful at whatever it is they wish to do, and they also don't want anybody to know about it. I know that if I had those skills, I wouldn't want anybody to know about it.
But using precognition or your dreams to win the lottery doesn't seem practical.
It's extremely unlikely even the best psychics on the planet, Joe and others, are going to sit down with their lottery ticket and use their psychic ability to fill it out and win. It just won't happen with our current understanding. It's like trying to listen to a symphony from your CD, except you're playing it through 2 tin cans and a string. You will lose all the information because the bandwidth, how much information you can get across the string, is very, very limited.
If we really knew anything about precognition, why don't we always win the lottery? I mean, I think evolution isn't that silly. If this is an evolutionarily determined ability, it's going to be for real survival factors, not simply making money. I mean, making money is late in evolutionary history. Being happy isn't.
Ultimately, no one can see the future clearly enough to know whether we will ever unravel the reality of premonitions.
I think there are 2 kinds of people in the world. There's the people who walk around and sort of dismiss it. You know, they get the hairs that rise on their arm, but they dismiss it as a funny feeling or doesn't have any consequence. It's not important to them. And then there's people that have come to rely on that in some way as a message of some sort, and they pay attention to it when they have that feeling. I'm the kind of person who pays very clear attention to it.
Just keep an open mind about it. Check it out and learn to know your own feeling when you wake up to do something about something if you can. I mean, that's the important thing. Like the fellow who called the airlines. I mean, that was doing something about it and risking a lot of flack, perhaps, but he did it. And if more of us took that kind of action, we would be better off.
There's no need for me to convince or defend. It is what it is. I don't have a full explanation of why or what or how. I just know, and I'm okay with it.
Okay, hon?
Hi, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
If I let Jim die, is that the same thing as killing him?
Honey, Jim's already dead.